Is this recorded? Yes, it is. Alrighty! Hello everybody, my name is Joshua Putris, and welcome to my Michelangelo video. My artist video project, which I chose Michelangelo, if you didn't notice by now. Alright, so moving on. So, I'm going to start by talking about his history, the history of his life, starting with his early life, obviously. So, Michelangelo di Lodovico, I don't know how to say his name. I'm sorry, I don't know how to say his name. Was born on March 6, 1475 in Caprice, Italy. I'm sorry, I'm just horrible with names. I don't know what's wrong with me. I just can't seem to say it. Anyways, moving on. He was less interested in schooling. His father, Leonardo di Buonarrota, I'm gonna just say Leonardo. Apprenticed him at the age of 13 about frescoes. This is about the first thing he learned. He didn't really go to school all that much, or more or less was he interested in it. And if you don't know, a fresco is a painting done rapidly in watercolor on wet plaster on a wall or ceiling so that the colors penetrate the plaster and become fixed as it dries. So basically, quick painting. Keep missing. Alright. So, after the age of 13, he later studied classical sculptures in the Medici Garden, which he was invited to, and that's where he did a lot of his study, and that's where he grew to become a sculptor, which he considers himself over being an artist, drawer, anything like that. And he was studying in the Medici Gardens from 1489 to 1492. And like I said before, during this time, it helped him lay the groundwork for what would become his distinctive style. Sculptures in a muscular position, so detailed, very human-like, and reality combined with an almost lyrical beauty. So there is a beauty to what he created, and you'll see that as he continues his life and his career. So now moving on to his early success and influence. In 1495, about 2 years after he left the Medici Gardens to go and do his own thing, he began sculpting. And he relocated to Rome, where he lived for the rest of his life and did almost all of his famous work. So this is where you'd see all of his famous work if you ever want to visit any of his work. And his first famous work was the Pieta. And break it down, the Pieta is a sculpture where Jesus is lying dead on Mary's lap. So after he was crucified, and he was 25 at the time when he finished this. Almost immediately after, so around the same time, he sculpted the 17-foot David sculpture, which many others before had attempted and failed. Oh, by the way, I am dressed like him, so this is the best I could find. So, I'd like the 10 extra credit points if you can give me some, please. This is basically what he wore. When I looked him up, he basically wore a robe, and that was basically the only thing I could find. So anyways, moving on, in his later life, I love you too, Mom. That was my mom. Okay, moving on. So, into his later life, Pope Julius requested him to paint the Sistine Chapel ceiling. He wasn't normally a painter, so this is his first painting, job. And while working on this, he had basically redone the whole thing, fired all of his assistants, and finished it on his own. And the day he finished it was October 15, 1512. And due to laying on his back for around 4 years, which is a lot, took a toll on his health. But he still lived to have a long life. Now, unlike many artists, Michelangelo achieved fame and wealth during his lifetime, which is pretty good. He did a good job. His name has become synonymous with the best of the Italian Renaissance, so he's basically known for being in the Renaissance, so that's the area where he's known. Anyways, following a brief illness, Michelangelo died on February 18, 1564, and he lived to be 89 years old, which is considerably long back in those days. He died at his home in Rome. So where he initially started working and doing all his work. So moving on from his life, now we're going to talk about events happening at the same time he lived or where he was working. So through his whole life, he lived during the mid-Renaissance movement, which he is known for and is one of the major artists. And at around 1519, so about a few years after he finished the Sistine Chapel, Leonardo da Vinci dies, and he was very young. But moving on from that, the Spanish conquistadors, so this is other events that happened during his life, conquered Cuba, the Aztecs, and Incans. And this is the time when they were moving into America, America. So, other art movements happening at this time. First, one of them was Gothic. So, Gothism is basically an architectural style that was used for architecture, and it was developed in the 12th century in France, mainly. Mannerism, moving on to the next movement, Mannerism was a later movement that happened during the High Renaissance period, which started up in 1520 and started to decline in around 1580. So Michelangelo's theory of art was he was mainly a humanist, which means he mainly created sculptures of people and made it in very human details. So art movements, like I said before, he belonged to the Renaissance art movement around the mid to high Renaissance area. Moving on from there. A summary of his body of work. This is just some of what he's done. He sculpted the Pieta and David, and Pieta is a scene when Jesus died after being crucified, and the David is King David, and it was very difficult at the time. He painted the Sistine Chapel, which was his first painting and one of few. The Doni Tondo is very famous. It's one of the few paintings that he's done. Basically, what Bacchus is Bacchus is the Greek god for wine, and one thing that still stands today and is very well known is St. Peter's Basilica. He took part in building that. So the main elements and principles of the design he tended to use, primarily, like I said, human sculpting, which was his main focus for sculpting. Even though he painted the Sistine Chapel, he did some paintings, but it was mainly sculpting, like I said before. Some of the 6 functions of art he uses was record and commemorate, which was the Sistine Chapel. So basically giving history to Jesus' life or times when Jesus was around. So history. And gives tangible form to the unknown. So basically creates, like for example, the Bacchus sculpture, he created to give the people like a good feeling of like what it looks like, of what Bacchus looks like if we were to picture him in real life. So art criticism, he took some when he was creating the David statue, when Mayor Piero Soderini said the nose is too thick. He agreed due to the mayor's opinion. So he fixed the nose and made it more, I guess, equivalent to the body. I personally agree because the nose should be equivalent to the whole body. If it's too big, then something looks off. And thank you. That is the end of my presentation.